With a 20-year reputation for clean business, Matt Glynn at Code Property Group is the first choice for real estate on the Sunshine Coast and surrounding areas. I've known Matt for a very long time from a personal level and professional level, and he is an excellent real estate agent. He's professional, he holds a high level of integrity, he presents incredibly well, and has a huge amount of knowledge when it comes to the real estate industry. So if you are in the market to buy, sell, or simply get a valuation and find out more about your current property, then give Matt a call on 0404 315 066 or matt.glynn, GLYNN at codepg.com. You won't be disappointed. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Paul's Body Engineering Podcast. It's been a couple of weeks since I've released one, and it just simply was a case that I didn't want to produce something that was not worthwhile listening to. You know, it's important that the podcast that I do, the content I provide, is of an educational value to every listener. And look, I don't have a huge amount of listeners. I'm not a Joe Rogan or anything like that, but I do obviously have a loyal base that tune in every time one is dropped. So I want to make sure that the content is relevant. This week's topic is a little bit contentious and somewhat of a taboo topic for a coach to talk about. And that is why I've fired clients. And I've done exactly that. And look, firing, terminating, sacking, it's probably the wrong term, but it makes the point very clear, and that is the coach or the trainer certainly has the option to cancel the coaching relationship with a client at any given time based on a number of different factors, and I have had to do that only a couple of times throughout my career so far, but I have done one recently, and that's what sort of brought up this topic to talk about, because mainstream population wouldn't believe that happens. Because at the end of the day, as a coach, I work for the client. The client engages me. They pay me. So that's technically employer and employee relationship, right? But in the situation where I'm obviously heavily invested in the client, I put a lot of time into them. I make sure that they get all the tools, they get all the advice, they get access to me, my knowledge, expertise, etc. When that relationship breaks down and a client disappears, they go AWOL, they don't communicate, they don't check in, they barely acknowledge communication, they bury their head in the sand, all these sorts of things, it becomes somewhat untenable. Now, a good coach, and I've done this plenty of times, is you reach out, you try and have a consult, you try and have a Zoom, you try and obviously collaborate with them, because at the end of the day, it's a customized approach. So you need to work with them, not against them. You can't have one system that fits everybody. You've got to have a system that's very flexible, very malleable, and allows for manipulation to suit the client. So if they need things changed, or if they need things to work in with their lifestyle, or they're not comfortable with certain questions being asked, or whatever the case may be, you work with them, and that's fine. But when communication disappears and you can't get hold of them, like literally for days on end, if not weeks on end, but also when you're somewhat gaslit regarding them saying, I will check in, I'll check in, I'll hold my end up to the bargain, I'll check in again, even though they've missed a couple, and then they don't, and then you're spending time and energy chasing them down through various means of communication, it becomes very challenging, and then you're putting a lot of time and energy into doing that, when that time and energy should be going into the clients that obviously want your service and want your help. So those clients are the ones that are doing the right thing. They're following the plan, they're checking in on a regular basis, they're openly communicating, and yet they're then getting less time or less energy or less focus because you're focusing on chasing up people that aren't doing their part. So it is a very challenging experience to go through, and I'm very much of a belief that I will not just take someone's money for the sheer fact that they're paying me. I have to be providing them a service. They have to be getting value for what they're paying for. And I've done it. I've had it numerous times where I've gone, look, you haven't checked in for a couple of weeks now. Do you honestly want this service? And a lot of the time they'll say yes, because they believe they do, but they're just not in a place to follow through on their actions and what they're actually saying they should be doing. And that's okay. If you're not there, you're not there. If you're not ready, you're not ready. But at least communicate that to me. So, I've had to obviously cancel relationships or cancel coaching relationships. But it's done through a process where I've contacted them numerous times and either got no reply or very little reply. And then I've had to sort of go through a step-by-step approach in terms of, okay, email 1, I'm reaching out. Email 2, look, I haven't heard anything. Email 3, look, if there's no response, this is what's potentially going to happen. Email 4 is, look, again, I haven't heard any response, so I'm giving you until 24, 48 hours from now. And then email 5 or 6 or whatever number I'm up to, because there's so many sent. It is a case that you basically say, look, I'm cancelling, and this is a process I'll take. So that firstly, as a coach, I'm covered, because I've made several attempts, and secondly, I'm outlining what I'm doing, the terms and conditions, how it's all going to come to an end, the cancellation of direct debit, access to training, all those sorts of things. So again, there's time and energy that goes into that, and you're constantly thinking about it, right? And you're wondering, damn, did I do something wrong? What have I done that's prompted this, or has initiated this recourse? Because obviously when people reach out for the first time, they're very enthusiastic, they're excited, they want to get started, they've got good intentions, they've got goals to meet. But then when it does go pear-shaped, for lack of a better term, you do question your ability, you question your service, and you question whether you've given them enough. Even though they probably sometimes acknowledge they're not doing their part, and that's fine. And look, there's no expectation of being perfect. But when check-ins go missing, and look, that is common in the industry. Check-ins, it is a common thing that check-ins don't get submitted, 1, on time, or 2, at all. And people feel that it chews up too much time, they don't want to submit it. And then the biggest one I've found is that they don't submit a check-in when they've had a bad week. And what I mean by bad week is they've gone off plan, they've eaten too much food, they've drunk alcohol, they haven't trained enough, they've lost motivation, and that will then generally lead to either a message or a communication of some form to me as a coach, or in other examples, saying, look, I'm not going to check in this week because of X, Y, and Z, because I've had a shit week, because I've done this. And my response immediately back to them is, no, you need to check in because you need to hold yourself to account. And secondly, a bad check-in actually carries more weight in terms of my ability to assess, analyze, and provide constructive feedback than a good check-in does. A good check-in is amazing, don't get me wrong. If someone's lost a kilo in a week and they've hit some PBs and they've made really good progress, they're sleeping great, they're feeling amazing, awesome, love it, and I will praise them to the moon and back. But there's not a lot of feedback in terms of things that we can change and implement to improve from that, right? There might be, but generally speaking, there may not be. But when you've had a shit week, the first thing you should do is check in, because straight away you're owning your decisions. And then second to that, you're accepting your fate in terms of what the hard conversation will be when you receive the feedback. Do you need to pull your finger out? Do you need to accept accountability? Do you need to make some serious change at home? Do you need to have some tough conversation with your partner? Do you need to empty the pantry, get rid of all the crappy food and start afresh? Do you need to pull yourself out of bed at 5 a.m. and get to the gym and stop being lazy? Like, these are the things that are confronting, they're challenging, they make you uncomfortable, but this is what makes you better. And people will avoid that by saying, look, I've had a shit week, so I won't check in. And then if they don't check in again and check in again, guess what? That's the new habit. That's the new routine. That's the new normal. So it becomes even harder to get that check-in process happening from the beginning again. And then that can lead to, obviously, them leaving. It's a common story within the health and fitness space, particularly for coaches. It really is. It seems all rosy and dandy at the start, but then as time goes on and the monotony and the repetitiveness of the process, which is what needs to happen, becomes too challenging or too overwhelming, well, guess what? They disappear. And that's where, obviously, the tough discussions have to be made. So look, over the 10 years I've been doing this, I've had to fire, sack, cancel, whatever term you want to use, a handful of clients over that time. It hasn't been many. But at the end of the day, I've got to look at myself in terms of a coach and ask the question, well, do I want these people as clients? Do I want these people, under my roof working with me in my team, in my community, when they're not putting in themselves, when they're not working on themselves, when their intention was good at the start, but it dwindled and faded to a point where they refuse to answer messages or respond to emails. And the answer simply is no. No, I want people who want to turn up. I want people who will acknowledge their actions. They're not going to be perfect. They're going to have the occasional blowout or loose weekend or holiday away. That's fine. I've got no dramas with that whatsoever. But at least they acknowledge when they need help. They'll check in on a regular basis. They'll keep communication open. They'll respond to messages, and they'll work with me. And I'll work with them, and I'll give them everything I've got, because that is an important thing. And if they achieve some great results, even with an inconsistent approach, fantastic. It means they're invested. It means they've bought into the process, and they're going to get some deliverables out of it. And that's important, you know. And when you have a down week, when you have a crappy week, you don't bury your head in the sand. You don't run away from your issues or you know the problems at hand. You confront them head on, and I'll do it with you. I'll talk you through it. Sure, there may be some tough conversations. There may be some tough truths. Like I said, don't be lazy. You know, stop eating like a dickhead. Get your ass out of bed and train. You know, don't make excuses, because we're going to be here in 12 months' time having the same conversations unless you take action now. And a lot of people, unfortunately, do that. They do that cycle. They either go from coach to coach to coach, thinking that they're going to get a better result simply by being with someone different, even though they're not accepting accountability themselves. Or they continue with the same bad habits over and over and over again and do not make the necessary change. So yes, I have sacked some clients before, and yes, I will do it in the future if necessary. I don't like doing it. It's an uncomfortable communication I have to send, and I have to send it because they don't obviously take messages or calls. And furthermore, I don't like taking money for no reason. You know, there may be some coaches out there that accept that. I do not. I want to be paid for my service. I want to make sure that the individual is getting value. They are making progress. And if they're not making progress, at least let's work together to make progress and not, you know, run away from the situation. So that's pretty much it. And I thought this was a good topic because it is a bit taboo. It is a bit controversial because it's not spoken about anywhere near enough in the industry. But with a lot of the close relationships I have with other coaches, I know it does happen quite frequently where coaches will pull the pin on a relationship simply because that individual has gone missing, they're ghosting people, they're not responding, or they're telling them they're going to do something and they don't. You know, they feed them false information. Like, all of those things can be leading down the path of a cancellation of a coaching relationship. So, you know, my advice to anyone listening to this who wants to employ a coach or is currently with a coach, be honest, be genuine, be transparent, don't bullshit, and when you're fucked up, own your fuck up, because I guarantee you will learn from it. You will learn to be better. You'll hold yourself in more account. You know, remember the days in school, high school, primary school, where you'd get reprimanded by a teacher in front of the whole class because you did something wrong. Maybe you spoke out of turn, maybe you swore, maybe you were talking, whatever, and the teacher's blown up at you. Did you do it again after that? Potentially not, unless you were a real ratbag. You wouldn't, because you didn't want to deal with that embarrassment and that reprimand, and you felt really ashamed of what you did. You go bright red in the face. I've experienced it firsthand. I still remember some days where I've done that. I was a shit of a kid in school. So you learn from it, right? So in this instance, it's the same thing. The biggest difference is we're adults now. We need to take accountability. Otherwise, we are not going to change. We're not children anymore. We're not relying on our parents to make decisions for us. We have to do it. And the only way to do it is to listen, take feedback, take that feedback, action it, and look for change and implement improvement. And I guarantee you, if you do that and work closely with someone, you will achieve your goals. There's no two ways about it. I've got plenty of clients, hundreds in fact, over the 10 plus years I've been doing this, that have had huge amounts of success simply because they followed the plan. Were they perfect? No. Were they consistent? For the most part. But they stuck to the plan. Even when they went off it, they came back on it. And the more they went off it, the more they came back on it, which meant they stayed on it for longer. They were consistent and they progressed in every facet of their lifestyle, now living a completely different lifestyle when they started. So, you know, don't ghost your coach. Don't ignore your coach. Reply to messages. And if you can't, at least acknowledge and say, look, I haven't been in contact with you for the last couple of days because of X, Y, and Z. There may be circumstances. I get it. There may be extenuating circumstances, and that is completely forgivable. It really is. But at least let them know. Just reach out and let them know and tell them what's going on. You don't have to give them all the detail if it is personal. That is perfectly fine. But at least acknowledge what is going on so they're not chasing you down, and then you reply rudely to them because you haven't held up your end. So at least acknowledge them. All right, I'll finish up there. I hope this has made sense for most people. And, look, obviously I'm going into bat for the coach in this particular podcast, but at the same time, I am a client of another coach. I have been a client for a coach before, multiple coaches, in fact. So I understand both sides. So I really understand the relationship and the inner workings of it and how it can best suit both parties. Therefore, that relationship needs to be strong. It needs to be forged really early on so that there is a high level of trust. And if it's not, work on it. Give it time. And this is the other thing that a lot of clients fail to realize, is that they need to develop that relationship over time so that they will trust the individual. I've posted and spoken about it before, where I've had clients reach out, new clients sign up, start with good intent, and then 4, 5, 6 weeks later they pull the pin. They haven't given it anywhere near enough time. You've got to give it time. It's a patient game, and I'll continue to spruik this till the day I die. Thank you very much for tuning in. This has been a short one, but a very in-depth and to-the-point one. I appreciate it once again for all those that do listen to my podcast. Please screenshot and share it across your stories. Please, if you're interested in any of my coaching services, obviously jump on paulsbodyengineering.com. It's all listed there. Alternatively, link in my bio on my Instagram, or even just send me a DM or an email if you're curious. Free consults at the moment, so don't be afraid to reach out and we can book in something, whether it's Zoom, phone call, or face-to-face. But other than that, I hope everyone is dry. Have a wonderful day. And as I say to every client, every single day, have a great day. Experience the difference with Matt Glynn at Code Property Group. With a 20-year reputation of a clean business, Matt is your guy when it comes to all things real estate. Make sure you give him a call now on 0404 315 066.